In this video, we're going to talk about how to calculate summary statistics for grouped data. And you can see we have an example off to the left where we're given a frequency table for quantitative data, and we're asked to find the mean and standard deviation and the 5-number summary. Much like with our list of raw data, I need to get my data in a calculator. When I do this for grouped data, because I don't know how many zeros and how many ones and how many twos I have in that first class, I treat that class as if all of the data in that class is at the midpoint. So what I'm going to give the calculator is the midpoints of every class, and then the number of data points in that class. So for example, my first class goes from 0 to 4, the halfway point is 2. I'm going to assume the data point in that class is at 2. For 5 to 9, the halfway point is 7. I would assume all 3 data points are at 7. So let's go ahead and get that into our list menu. Stat, enter, and then I'm going to put the midpoints in the first list and the frequency in the second list. So for this data set, the midpoints rather are easy to spot. So 2, 7, 12, 17, 22, 27, 32, and 37. I have 8 rows in my table, and that last midpoint is at row 8. So that's a good sign I did that correctly. And then I'm going to come over to list 2 with the sideways arrow and do the same thing with frequency. The check that I did that correctly is that both lists should be the same length. If I try and run one-var stats on 2 lists that are different lengths, it will pop up an error message. Remember that to calculate, we go Stat, and then go over to the Calc menu, and then we select one-var stats. And now we need to tell it my midpoints are in list 1, my frequencies are in list 2, second 2. We then go down to Calculate and press Enter, and it spits out that same list of summary stats that we saw before with raw data. So for this grouped data, our mean is a little bit less than 17. We had 28 data points altogether. If I added up those frequencies, they should add to 28. I have a standard deviation of about 8.3. And then I can see my 5-number summary. The minimum is the midpoint of the lowest class. The maximum is the midpoint of the highest class. That's great if midpoints are easy to spot. What happens if I have really awkward midpoints and I don't know what those midpoints are? And the answer is that list menu can calculate them for us. So let's go back to our Stat Edit menu and clear all this out and pretend that we didn't know what those midpoints were. If I don't know what the midpoints are, I'm going to enter the lower limits in list 1, the upper limits in list 2, and I'm going to have the calculator calculate the midpoints in list 3. So lower limits first, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. And then upper limits in the next, 4, 9, 14, 19, 24, 29, 34, 39. To fill the midpoints in, I'm going to go over to list 3. In order for the calculator to calculate all of the midpoints for me, I need to enter a formula for this list. So instead of hanging out here in the first box of list 3, I'm going to go up to its title. And you'll notice it says list 3 equals. And I'm going to tell it how to calculate the midpoints from list 1 and list 2. I know that to find midpoints, I'm going to add the lower value in list 1 plus the upper value in list 2, and I'm going to divide by 2. That's how I would do it manually. 0 plus 4 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 5 plus 9 is 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. That's what we did in our heads for the last example. When I press enter, the calculate's going to do all of that at once. And you'll notice it gives us the same values we calculated manually. Now that I have my midpoints, I need to put my frequencies, and I don't have any room here, so I'm going to go over to list 4 and use list 4 as my frequency column. The only change now is my data is in list 3, my frequencies are in list 4. So when I call stat calc 1var stat, I need to tell it that. Data is in list 3, frequencies are in list 4. And you'll notice we must have done this correctly because we get the same median we got from before, the same standard deviation, the same number of data values. All right, if you have any questions on how to run calculations on group data, feel free to send me an email or drop by room 111. Otherwise, I'll see you in our next video.